Hello everyone, in today's news. Will marijuana be federally legalized in 2021? Democrat Senate leaders join forces to get it done. Three leading supporters of marijuana reform in Congress said that the issue will be prioritized in the new Democratic Senate this year, and that draft legislation will be released in the coming weeks to begin a conversation about what a federal policy change will look like. According to Senators Chuck Schumer, Wyden and Cory Booker, DNJ, ending cannabis prohibition is crucial to the remedy of this failed war. However, this is insufficient on its own to resolve the harm decades of prohibition have done to America's people of color. In addition to advocating for federal legalization, each of the lawmakers said that we should also enact measures that lift up people who were unfairly targeted in the war on drugs, especially as more states opt to legalize. We are committed to working together to advance comprehensive cannabis reform legislation that will not only end this sad chapter in American history, but also undo the devastating consequences of these discriminatory policies, they said. The Senate will treat this issue as a priority. The narrative has been building in recent months, with Schumer making it clear both before and after the election that he would work diligently to move reform legislation after he assumed control of the Senate floor agenda. The senator said that in the early part of 2017, they will release a unified draft on comprehensive reform to secure restorative justice, protect public health, and implement responsible taxes and regulations. Getting input from stakeholders is a significant step in developing this critical legislation. Lawmakers like Schumer and Booker stressed that Democrats reclaiming their majority in the chamber was imperative to pass comprehensive reform this year. A bill to federally declassify cannabis cleared the House last year, but it was unable to advance in the GOP-controlled Senate. The release of Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, RKY's marijuana policy reform after years of mockery and neglect of the issue is heartening, said Normal Political Director Justin Streckel. We will work constructively with congressional leaders, non-government groups, and communities, historically most impacted by criminalization, in order to craft the strongest and most comprehensive bill possible to right the wrongs of nearly a century of federal cannabis prohibition, he said. Representative Earl Blumenauer, D.R., who has spent decades working to end marijuana prohibition, and is a co-chair of the Congressional Cannabis Caucus, said he is encouraged by a new Senate majority that is ready to move forward, together, on comprehensive cannabis legislation. The House passed Marijuana Opportunity, Reinvestment, and Expungement, MORE, Act, will likely be referred to Wyden's committee, the Senate Finance Committee, for consideration once introduced. We look forward to working with the Senate to refine the bill and advance its core principles, Blumenauer said. The missing ingredient in cannabis reform has been Senate action. Being free of the lockdown imposed by the former Senate Majority Leader makes all the difference in the world. The Majority Leader's comments indicate that any legislation filed will likely include elements of several bills that were passed in the last Congress. He said the legislation is actively being merged. It is expected that cannabis reform proposals will be put forward by Democrats in control, and they may make it to President Joe Biden's desk. While the president does not support full marijuana legalization and only supports relatively modest cannabis reforms, advocates are hopeful he won't veto or undermine any wide-reaching marijuana legislation that Congress prioritizes. In 2021, 2 congressional marijuana bills have already been filed, one to amend Schedule I of the Controlled Substances Act to move cannabis to Schedule III, and another to prevent VA benefits from being denied to veterans who use medical marijuana in compliance with state law. Here is the statement by the senators. Washington, D.C., U.S. Senators Cory Booker, DNJ, Wyden, D.R., and Chuck Schumer, DNY, issued the following joint statement regarding comprehensive cannabis reform legislation in the 117th Congress. The war on drugs has been a war on people, particularly people of color. Ending the federal marijuana prohibition is necessary to right the wrongs of this failed war and end decades of harm inflicted on communities of color across the country. But that alone is not enough. As states continue to legalize marijuana, we must also enact measures that will lift up people who were unfairly targeted in the war on drugs. We are committed to working together to put forward and advance comprehensive cannabis reform legislation that will not only turn the page on this sad chapter in American history, but also undo the devastating consequences of these discriminatory policies. The Senate will make consideration of these reforms a priority. In the early part of this year, we will release a unified discussion draft on comprehensive reform to ensure restorative justice, protect public health, and implement responsible taxes and regulations. Getting input from stakeholder groups will be an important part of developing this critical legislation. Thank you for reading this article by my 420 Spot. Have a great day. Check out our t-shirts at www.mmjtshirts.com.